что нам делать? Ждать или начинать?
Я думаю, начинать.
Сергей?
Да. Будем начинать.
Начинаем?
Да.
Я надеюсь, вы хорошо выспались. Это, который мы проснулись еще вчера обрабатывали материал сегодня дня, проснуться подойдут. Вы имеете большую честь, я вам честно скажу, сегодня даже лицезреть, еще к тому же послушать реального гиганта большой хирургии, эндоваскулярной большой хирургии, который расскажет нам то, что можно сделать. И поэтому, пожалуйста, если у вас есть готовые вопросы, спрашивайте его, это важно, а если нет, послушайте хорошо, возникнут вопросы, значит, вы что-то знаете в этой области. So, please, we are ready.
Okay, so dear colleagues, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizer who are here, the president, past president, president-elect, and David Vassilani for inviting me here. It's a real pleasure, and this place is fantastic, and I hope that you're going to appreciate what I show you, even if you and me, we are not able to practice it too much because it's very expensive. So let's start. We are going to address the percutaneous intervention, microregurgitation. A few general comments to start with. Well, is it important? Are there many patients like that? The answer is yes. And if you see this epidemiological study, only one in the world, from the Mayo Clinic, you see that after 75 years of age, grossly 6% of the patients do have a severe mitral valve disease. And you also see that if you have a severe mitral valve disease, you are going to die more than if you have not severe mitral valve disease. So it's not good. And in Europe, and Russia was part of it, we did this EURARD survey. It was roughly 10 years ago. And we showed that mitral regurg was number 2 just after aortic stenosis among the native valve disease. So the answer is yes, it is frequent. Yes, it is not good to have it. All of you know about TAVI, transcatheter aortic valve implant. It works extremely well, everybody is happy. Mitral, well, it's a little bit more of a debate. Why? Because the mitral valve is very complex. We don't see, but the surgeons see it. There are plenty of things playing all together. The annulus, subvalvular annulus, leaflet, left ventricle, aortic valve. So it is a complex anatomy with complex interaction. There is not one disease. Aortic stenosis is quite easy, one disease. Here, there are several diseases. First of all, you have the primary mitral valve disease. Well, in the world, it's mostly the Barlow disease or the fibroelastic deficiency. And we have the other disease, very frequent. But how frequent is frequent, we don't know. The problem is the left ventricle. The left ventricle is dilated. There is tethering of the valve due to the distortion of the ventricle and the subvalvular apparatus, and it creates a vicious circle. Mitral regurg, volume overload, LV dilatation, even more MR. Okay, it's correct to say that, but is it good to correct MR? Are we treating the right target? Are we dealing with the correct goal? Or are we missing the target because the problem is ventricle? We don't know. So, another thing, to make it even more complex, the patients we see in Europe now, including Russia, with mitral regurg are not very young. They are not old, but they are not very young. 65 years, 44%, half of them are over 70 years of age, and 40% of them have several comorbidities. So complex disease, multiple disease, and the patients are sick, not only from the cardiac disease, but also from the comorbidity. So this sets the stage for the rest. How are we going to evaluate this patient before offering a treatment? And here is from the guidelines, ESCTS guidelines, you all know. First question is to know, is the disease severe? Second question, does the patient have symptoms? The third question, which is difficult, are the symptoms related to the valve disease? Sometimes difficult in elderly patients. What is the life expectancy and expected quality of life? Even more important, what is the risk-benefit ratio of any intervention? What are the patient wishes? And what can we offer to the patient? And we are always to go through all these steps carefully. How do we evaluate? We should remain clinician and echo. Echo is fantastic, but we need to check for consistency between severity, mechanism, and anatomy, and to check the consistency between echo and your clinical findings. At least in my place, sometimes there are inconsistencies. So I won't spend much time, but we have to grade using echo, grade the mitral regurg, and there are different thresholds for severity in primary and secondary using this EROA and regurgitant volume. These numbers are, well, accepted, but they are non-magic numbers. They should be consistent with the rest in order to say this gentleman has a severe MR or has not a severe MR. Now, I go very briefly what are the results of surgery. In primary MR, in expert centers, many repairs done with fantastic results up to 10, 15, 20 years. On the opposite, in secondary MR, surgery remains a real challenge. After 20 years of surgery, 30 years of surgery, still unable to show a benefit for survival. Probably a benefit for symptoms, no proof of a benefit for survival. Surgery is not a simple thing. Surgery in mitral regurg, just have a look. Surgeons, they do repair, they do resect, they do respect, they do plastic, they do chordal transfer, they do edge-to-edge, and they add ring annuloplasty. So, it's a meal with several dishes. Now, what happens in real life? Let's have a look at what happens in the US. Well, in the US, many patients remain under medical treatment, which is not good. And you see that after 5 years, 90% of these patients, 90% will have one rehospitalization, and after 5 years, half of them will die. It's not good to remain under medical therapy alone. So we have surgery which works very well in primary, maybe we are not sure in secondary. We have medical treatment which is not sufficient at all. And what happens at the end? Well, in your heart survey, we're able to show that we, the cardiologists, when we see a patient with MR, with severe MR, with symptoms, in half of the cases, we do not send this patient to surgery. We do not even discuss the case with surgery. So we are very much afraid of the risk of surgery, but we completely forget that if we do not operate this patient, they are going to die. So we are frightened by the risk of operation, but we completely forget that the natural history is not good. So, after this long introduction, let's enter into the issue. So here is the story. We are moving from open surgery to video-assisted surgery to robotic surgery and now to percutaneous treatment. It's a long story. The incision starts very large and finish very small, and we use direct vision, then video vision, then echo guide. This slide summarizes my talk, but I still do have 40 minutes, so I'm going to continue. So, how to perform the procedure? How to enter the heart? How to approach the mitral valve? Well, there are many ways. Our surgical colleagues, they do prefer transapical.
It's very good, very direct. Apex, straight to the mitral. Some others like the transarterial. Not very easy, not very simple. Others, crazy people, they use the jugular. Why should we make simple things when we can make complicated things? Probably the best approach, the more natural, is to go transeptal, and then approach the mitral valve. So you see there are plenty of approaches. Two are the winners, transeptal and transarterial. So one thing we should remember is echo, echo, echo to guide the procedure. Echo is essential if you want to do transeptal puncture to perform an intervention in the mitral. You need to see the tenting, I'm going to show that, the foramen ovale. You need to see where you puncture. You need to see if you cross the septum. You need to see if you have some complication. So the tenting. When you are doing your transeptal with TE guidance, you see this tenting very nicely. Here I am, here I am, here I am. If you don't see the tenting, you should not puncture because you need landmarks towards the aorta and also to see if you are anterior or posterior and to see where you are, what is the distance from the mitral valve. One message, echo is essential to guide you. And we are using a language. So the principle is the person doing the echo should speak the same language as the intervention. That is crucial. And here is the anatomy. Dr. Raffaelli knows that, we don't know that. The foramen ovale, the aorta, inferior vena cava, superior vena cava, tricuspid, and we have to use the same terms. Here it is not, it is superior. Here it is inferior. Low doesn't mean inferior. Low means close to the valve. High means at a distance from the valve. Anterior means close to the aorta. Posterior at a distance from the aorta. This seems crazy, but it is the language. And you learn English, you learn, I don't know, whatever language. You should learn the alphabet of echo. So echo, for example, in mitral clip is crucial. You should go from superior to inferior, that's very important, to target properly the fossa ovale, and then you have to remember this line. This line is essential. Here you have the mitral valve, here the tricuspid, here you have the septum, here you have the appendage, the aorta. If you puncture very anterior, you'll never go, never to the mitral. You have to go posterior at a distance from the aorta. If you go here, you are going to target the mitral valve. So if we know a little bit of anatomy, we are the winner. Then, when you are in the foramen ovale, you must go a little bit posterior. Here you are close to the aorta, it's not good. To anterior, you have to move toward posterior. Here you'll be in good position. And finally, you need to measure the distance between your puncture site and the mitral valve to be able to catch the mitral valve. So, echo guidance using the same language. Now, here are the devices. Well, there are many, there are plenty. We are going to concentrate on this device. Well, here we are, and Dr. Raffaelli will probably comment, we are producing this double orifice technique. Dr. Alfieri or the surgeon did. If you put a couple of stitches, you create a double mitral valve orifice. He showed that in surgery it works, and then it was done by interventionists using a transeptal approach, and you grasp the leaflet between the two arms of the clip. That is mostly the thing. But the surgical colleague will tell us, well, it's good to do this technique, but look at the results from the surgical pioneer. If you do not add annuloplasty, it won't last very long. If you add annuloplasty, it will be better. So immediate message, one intervention technique alone won't make the job. So briefly, here is the device, quite complicated, many buttons. The device is extremely sophisticated. You have the arms, and you see, you go across the mitral valve. When you are correct, you grasp, and then you release the little clip. So how does it happen? You are in a cath lab. Here it was a previous cath lab, very, very small, not very large. You are going to compare with a German cath lab in a minute. So here you have the patient, you have the operator, general anesthesia, and the other player, echocardiographer. So here it is. So first we use a transseptal, we introduce the device here in the left atrium. Then we have to navigate, to bend the device towards the mitral. And you see in Echo 3D, we see very, very nicely the device in the left atrium. We should not touch the left atrium. And then we orientate the device toward the mitral valve. You see the orientation, and you see how 3D echo is very, very helpful to do that. Then we have to go medial or lateral. And this view is very, very important in 3D echo to navigate, and we have to speak the same language, medial or lateral. And here, it's very, very important to use these two views, intercommissural view, medial, lateral, and medial, and then this LVOT view to know if we are too anterior or too posterior. When using these two views, with all the buttons on this mitra clip, you can navigate and approach the valve. Finally, you are okay, you feel you are in the good orientation, you open the arm of the clip, and then you are going to see if you split the jet, if you are correctly oriented towards the jet, and thanks to 3D echo, you see if you are perpendicular, you see the arms are open, if you are perpendicular to the mitral orifice. So really, it's much, much, much echo-guided, speaking the same language. You are open here, you are across the valve, you enter the left ventricle with your arms open, you are nicely perpendicular, almost ready to go, almost ready to pull back very gently. And you pull back very gently. The goal is to put the valve here in between the arms. So when you are very happy, you start closing these things, grasping the leaflets. Here the leaflets are grasped. It looks very nice in 3D echo, and you can close the clip. You close the clip and you assess the results. What do you want to see? Of course, you want to see that the MR decreases before and after. You want to see that the leaflets are nicely catched, and you want to see if you do not have any gradient. Gradient should be less than 5 millimeters of mercury on the average, and you want to see also this double mitral orifice. If you have all these features, you are happy, you can release the clip. If you are not happy, you can change the position, you can add a second clip, even a third clip, a fourth clip. Good news, the mitra clip is very expensive. This is 20,000 euros, but if you put 5 mitra clips, it is the same price. But don't put 5, that's too much. But the point is, it is a very, quiet, it's lengthy but quiet procedure. Patients are usually very, very stable, no major hypertension, no real problem. So if you are happy, you release the clip. If you are not happy, you redo the position. So the lesson is, it's quite complex, but if you speak the same language, if you go slowly, stepwise, if you use these safety guards, you are going to win. So, what is the total experience today? Over 30,000 patients treated worldwide. It's a lot. But if you remember TAVI, it is 300,000. It started at the same time. So, it must be more difficult, more complex. So, what is the evidence? You all know about this study, the big randomized study. But it's good to be randomized, but only less than 300 patients, and big mistake. It was the very early days of mitra clip, and the goal was to compare this technique to the gold standard surgery. Not good to compare a young technique to the massive. So, the inclusion criteria, the patients were all candidates for surgery, a bit crazy, no bad ventricle, and many anatomical contraindications. We can discuss that after. So here are these patients. Most of them were patients with degenerative MR few were with secondary MR, and most of them were standard risk. It's a big mistake because they mixed up the patient with primary and secondary. This should not be done, but slides. What is the conclusion? Safety. The safety of this percutaneous technique was better than the safety of surgery, but this is mostly due to a reduction in transfusion. First message, safety is good. Second message, it's a very complex slide, but we'll go slowly through. Here is a mitral regurg before, and here is a mitral regurg after 1 year. And this slide comes from the Compass. And you see the description is 80% of the patients have less than 3+ MR. But as doctors, we are more interested to see that only 50% of the patients have no or mild MR to finish with. And this is not as good as surgery. In surgery, you see that 80% of the patients have 0 or 1+ MR. So the reduction in MR is less with this device than with surgery. Another lesson is we have followed up to 5 years, and you see that the results are very stable. Second message, if you get a good result initially, most patients will remain stable up to 5 years. And this translates into clinical findings. Survival without reoperation. And here you see that the patient in the surgical arm fared very well after 5 years. 92% without redo surgery. Good. And patient with MitraClip is less favorable. 74% after 5 years. So you can read it in two different ways. Only 74%.